Travelers. I'm Josh.
And I'm Kahi.
And we're the Genshin Guys. Welcome all. This podcast is for fans of Genshin Impact, the mobile game made by HoYoverse, formerly known as MiHoYo. Here we talk about our opinions, experiences, and dreams about Genshin Impact. If you like our show, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to the podcast. So, Kahi, before we get started, how are you doing today?
Recovering from a slight power outage, as you may know. Looks like everything is fine, but yeah, there was just some maintenance that was up the road, or down the road, I guess. Yeah, and there was a downed pole, so they put it back up, and it was just, a couple of hours of no power, which wasn't that bad. Everything that I was using had battery.
Yeah, we almost didn't get to record today's episode, huh?
Yeah, it was almost a no-go. But other than that, everything's up and running, and it's still getting a little warmer, so I'm really starting to feel that summer weather. But it's, so far, so good. Everything I'm monitoring right now is fine. No glitches on my computer, none of my equipment's down. But what about you, Josh? How's your equipment? How's your computer running?
So you're going to ask about my computer before me. Okay, I got it. Just making sure. So...
Well, naturally, it will come along in the conversation, of course.
Oh, yes, of course. It's implied. So I've been kind of on a voice actor kick lately, and I've been trying to do some different things.
I can hear
practice. Oh, you can hear it? Thanks. Yeah, so I just thought it'd be really interesting if I used a little bit of that talent and my voice to be able to bring some entertainment to today's episode. But yeah, I've actually just been really having a great time trying different things, being able to practice my voice not only in different podcasts, but also narration, different character voices, auditions, something that's been really great, and I've been really enjoying it a lot. So, I'm looking forward to the future. Hopefully one day I'll be in Genshin, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
This is actually good practice because it helps your voice to remember how much stress to put, what kind of how to move your jaw so much. It's muscle memory.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It's kind of weird because kind of have to be someone else but most of the time, but I'm actually just trying to be myself while using a different voice that isn't quite mine. So we'll see how it goes. Alright, so today we are doing our third interlude episode. This episode will be pre-recorded ahead of time in order to get ahead of any downtime that Kahi and I might have in our schedules so that we can still make our weekly Monday release schedule. So we won't be able to bring you up-to-date news, our usual Our Weeks in Genshin segment, or the answers to our current community question. In terms of community question though, you'll have more time to answer, so hopefully it'll be a more lively discussion. As always, you can still reach out to us and follow us on our joint account on Twitter at GenshinGuysPod, or our individual accounts, which will be in the description. We appreciate you all, and hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, so for today's episode, Kahi, what have we got? We have got a lore learn-along. Yes, it's been a while since we've had our last lore learn-along. And this time we'll be focusing on the Cataclysm. Now, this of course means many things. We don't know everything about the Cataclysm, but we do know some things. And today, we're going to be talking about the Cataclysm and what we know happened in each nation according to the Genshin Impact Fandom Wiki. So, let's get ready and get started. Are you ready, Kahi?
I'm ready. Are you ready? Whoever you strange voice person is.
Yeah. All right.
I'm having a hard time getting used to this inflection because I'm so used to chill person.
Yeah,
but this is really bright. This joining me as brother.
I could be chill. Okay, so how about we do this? Let's talk about the Cataclysm.
Nice and soft. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thanks, Kahi. Okay. So,
because it kind of sounds weird, if you're talking about Cataclysm, that a lot of people died, and you're like, hey, so I guess it happened like this.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people died.
That's why I choose to adopt this kind of voice instead. Okay, so first things first, I'm gonna look at the Cataclysm page on the wiki. And it reads, the Cataclysm, also referred to by a myriad of other descriptions, including the catastrophe, the disaster, the fall of Khaenri'ah, or the Ancient Kingdom, the Dark Calamity or the Calamity of Darkness, and the Pitch Black Calamity, refers to a period of widespread chaos and destruction which occurred 500 years ago. The conflicts surrounding the Cataclysm primarily revolve around the encroachment of the Abyss, an otherworldly power at odds with Celestia's power, and the destruction of Khaenri'ah, a nation that lived without the influence of the gods. While the exact order of events is unknown, monsters carrying abyssal power spewed forth from Khaenri'ah and wreaked havoc throughout Teyvat. Khaenri'ah's attempt to rebel against the gods ended with its destruction at the hands of the gods and the heavenly principles. This led survivors from the fallen nation to bear grudges against Celestia and the Seven Archons, while the Seven themselves grew embittered towards Celestia. Two of the Teyvat's chapter main antagonistic groups, the Abyss Order and the Fatui, were established as a direct response to Celestia's actions. Now, the exact circumstances surrounding the Cataclysm remain a mystery, but it is linked to the quote-unquote truth of this world. The traveler's journey is to uncover said truth, during which they will learn more about the Cataclysm. So this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to talking about the Cataclysm, and from now we will be tackling each nation in the wiki under its The Cataclysm from 500 Years Ago section, and we're going to be talking about the information that we have in there. Okay, Kahi, you ready? I'm going to start with Mondstadt. Is that alright?
That's alright with me. Go right ahead.
Alright, The Cataclysm 500 Years Ago. Monsters from the Abyss invade the above-ground world of Teyvat, causing widespread devastation. The people of Teyvat attribute the creation of these monsters to a great sinner, Gold, also known as Albedo's master and mother, Rhine-daughter. The kingdom of Khaenri'ah is destroyed by the heavenly principles, causing the fall of the Eclipse dynasty and the entire civilization. Khaenri'ah's destruction causes a devastating ripple effect. The Seven become involved in Khaenri'ah after the Abyss invasion of Teyvat. During the Cataclysm, the Knights of Favonius, led by the current Grandmaster Arundhalein and Rostam, go on an expedition to Khaenri'ah to fight the monsters. Rostam mentors a man known as the White Knight, possibly Roland, who loved justice above all else and fought against the monsters of Khaenri'ah. As he fought monsters, he came to be known as the Bloodstained Knight, and people started fearing him. He then ventures deep into Khaenri'ah and dies battling monsters. In the depths of the world, he learns about the origin of the monsters that destroyed Khaenri'ah and the ultimate injustice that turned the people of Khaenri'ah into monsters, therefore joining the Abyss Order. An alchemist from Khaenri'ah, Gold, or Rhine-daughter, creates one of her masterpieces, Durin. She sends Durin and other creatures she created to the continent of Teyvat to display their beauty. Upon reaching Mondstadt, however, Durin lays waste to the city, although it is suggested that Durin was not conscious of his actions after reaching Teyvat until Dvalin fatally wounded him in their battle. At that time, there was no Lionfang Knight, as Arundhalein, then Grandmaster of the Knights of Favonius and Lion of the South, gave up fighting after his friend Rostam died during the expedition to Khaenri'ah. As a result, there was also no one strong enough to take on Durin. The people's cries for help are heard by the Anemo Archon, who calls upon Dvalin. The two engage Durin in battle and eventually defeat him, but Dvalin ingests Durin's poisoned blood, corrupted by the Abyss's power in the process. To recuperate, Dvalin takes refuge in Decarabian's tower in Old Mondstadt and falls into deep slumber. Durin's corpse falls over on Dragonspine, and the power inside Durin's blood seeps into the land, reviving the frost-bearing tree. Durin's blood appears to coagulate as scarlet quartz, due to the high concentrations of the mineral in Wyrmrest Valley, wherein Durin's heart still beats. Rosalind Krutschka Lohfalter returns to Mondstadt and learns of Rostam's death. In her rage and despair, she uses the art of liquid flame she learned at Sumeru Academia to turn her body into that of living flame to avenge him, and becomes known as the Crimson Witch of Flames. Okay, so a lot of things to discuss there. Kahi, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
The name that kept coming up was Durin, but Durin was a dragon, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, Durin was created by Gold or Albedo's master and adopted mother Rhine-daughter. So basically it's Gold Rhine-daughter. You could say like her full name, but Gold is more of like a title. Yeah, alchemist from Khaenri'ah, Gold Rhine-daughter. So That's
Yeah,
her.
Gold is kind of like a
And
nickname.
she made Durin.
Yeah.
I guess so. But so Durin was a dragon. It was never in this part actually. It was never referred to as being a human form. But then Rosalind, which is Senora,
Mm-hmm.
learns of Rostam's death because Durin killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of okay, I'm trying to find out the link here because
yeah, Rostam
Senora
died.
mad at her?
Rostam died during the expedition to Kynria.
Oh, okay. So Rosalind just went into like a rage, but it wasn't. She didn't really look at it as Rhindaughter's fault. Like she didn't look at Rhindaughter as the cause of her despair. She just fell into despair.
Right.
So I don't think that she's gonna have any kind of like grudge against her. Not that I'm thinking that she's gonna come back or anything, but I still have a feeling she might come back in some form.
It turns
but yeah, I was trying to find
out
the
that
connection.
Rostam's death
If there
has
was a
nothing to
connection.
do with Gold, so I don't think
No.
that
Not directly, at
Senora
least.
would have anything to do with it.
Mhm.
Rostam died during the expedition to Kynria, so it didn't happen in Mondstadt. But Durin attacked Mondstadt, which is what they were talking about. So I just read everything under the Wikipedia section. Even if they weren't technically connected, there's a bunch of bullet points, and I just read all of them. So, yeah. So just because I read it like that, they're not actually related. They're meant to be read in one thing like that. So, yeah. So
like major bullet points.
Right, exactly. So basically, I don't think they're related, but you never know.
So I think the biggest event that happened in Mondstadt during the Cataclysm was Durin's creation and I guess defeat, because Durin's heart still beats in Dragonspine with the scarlet what is it called?
Quartz.
Scarlet quartz again.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing to happen in Mondstadt. So the monsters are appearing from the abyss and they're going all over the place.
Right, and Venti
this
called upon
particular
Dvalin to fight Durin, and they won. But Dvalin got corrupted, and in all that time after the Cataclysm, until we meet Dvalin, he's been corrupted, slowly becoming more and more corrupted. This is from what I understand. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Just trying to see if there's any. I know this is like a bullet point section and not like an entire chronology of all the events that happened during this time. It's trying to focus on Mondstadt, but I think the big takeaway is Durin's creation and Rosalind, Senora, and then just more ties to Albedo. So it still sucks that Albedo and the whole Dragonspine event was a time-gated event, and we can't experience that again. New players have no idea.
Yeah, well,
Like, I've been watching,
it sounds like Senora was originally from Mondstadt? Yeah.
And then was taken in by Piero.
Right.
Who is the Jester. So the first Fatui Harbinger. Okay. So that's what happened in Mondstadt. Now, Josh, what is the biggest takeaway for you from what happened in Mondstadt during the Cataclysm?
Well, I'd have to agree. According to this, basically Rhindaughter, it seems unintentionally, but also we don't know, that she created Durin, and Durin wreaked havoc upon Mondstadt. So I'm not exactly sure if that was intentional, but it definitely caused the most damage. And it's something that the people of Mondstadt are definitely not going to forget. So, and if you go to Dragonspine, you can still find traces of Durin there, as well as, since we know through Albedo's story that Durin wasn't the only masterpiece or project that she made that has wreaked havoc on people before, because we know about the primordial Albedo, who's a little different, the prototype one, right? And I think that it's important because Rhindaughter is likely to become an important character in this in the story, in the main story, right next to Alice. And Alice and Rhindaughter are friends. So, yeah.
So I guess it boils down to, hey, keep your eyes out for any mention of Rhindaughter or Gold or the Great Sinner.
Exactly.
We just had a event where some weird voice was like talking in your head. And then they called themselves a sinner, but that was like a more of a male voice. So it might be someone very similar on the same line or the same level as Rhindaughter. So, yeah, that's the biggest takeaway from Mondstadt.
Great.
Going into Liyue. So
All right, take it
Liyue
away.
Liyue had some pretty interesting events that happened during the Cataclysm 500 years ago. And one of the biggest things that kind of spurred this, lore learn along is because, especially in Sumeru, we had so many mentions of, oh, hey, this happened 500 years ago. Oh, hey, by the way, 500 years ago, something happened over here. Apparently, a lot of things happened all over the world 500 years ago. So we're just kind of taking a little bit of a tour around history. So, in Liyue, in their Cataclysm event, the Chasm and the Dunyu Ruins are two known locations majorly impacted by the Cataclysm. So the Chasm is still mostly a part of Liyue, because that's when it first appeared in that part of the map, but at this point it's kind of its own area just because of how many things that happened in it. But the Dunyu Ruins are another thing that has been impacted by the Cataclysm. So an iron meteorite impacted the chasm, and then monsters poured out of the chasm, and in response, Morax, which is Zhongli back then, sent the Myelith to defend and evacuate the miners. An unnamed Yaksha, who had once abandoned their duty to defend Liyue, returned to fight alongside the Myelith. The Yaksha and the Myelith who chose to lead the vanguard ultimately perished in battle. The monster's threat was diverted by combined efforts of the Yaksha, who revealed to be a Bosacious, a mortal thaumaturge named Boyang, and the Myelith vanguard. They contrived a stratagem to trap and seal the beasts in the depths of the chasm by using the Fantastic Compass, a catalyst which had the power to manipulate space. In the critical moments of the fight, Bosacious, Boyang, and the Myelith vanguard ultimately sacrificed themselves by sealing themselves along with the beasts because the compass needed constant energy flow from a mortal and an adeptus to operate. There were very few survivors in the conflict of the chasm. One such person was Rong Zhao, Boyang's brother. But he went insane when returned to his family. Another figure was the Myelith, who lost all 4 limbs when rescuing the miners and fending off the monsters, but later he taught himself to become a famed doctor. I'm going to say that one more time. Another figure was a Myelith who lost all 4 limbs when rescuing the miners and fending off the monsters, but later he taught himself to become a famed doctor. He set up the memorial of the fellow Myelith comrades after he received a vision. What occurred in Dunyu Ruins is unknown, but its people decided to abandon the city and move to Liyue Harbor. None of the refugees nor Adepti have spoken about what happened there. The emerging abyssal influence was said to be the reason people abandoned Dunyu Ruins, and it became a ruin. Dunyu Ruins may be the byproduct of the main conflict in the chasm due to the fact that Bosacious commanded the Myelith force to hold the line at 60 miles outside the chasm at all costs, which can mean the nearest location, Dunyu Ruins, was also affected by the chasm's waves of monsters as well. So,
Okay, I think it's Millilith.
Places. Millilith?
Yeah, but it's okay.
Is it Millilith? Oh yeah, I guess two L's. I always call it Myelith because it's easier.
It is easier. You're right.
But Millilith, it could be Millilith.
Okay.
So, two big things that impacted Liyue from the Cataclysm is the creation of the chasm and Dunyu Ruins. But Josh, what's something that stood out to you in this? Anything that reminded you of something?
Well, one of my favorite theories is that other figure who was a Millilith who lost all 4 limbs when rescuing miners and fending off monsters, and later taught himself to become a famed doctor, set up and later got a vision. There is a theory that is Baiju, and I think that's a really interesting theory that still, even after doing Baiju's story, doesn't sound like him, but that was the rumor. But I'm curious.
Yeah, it was never implied that he had fake limbs.
Right. So I'm really curious if we ever meet this character, or if that's really just a random story that they wanted to include in the chasm. So that really sticks out to me as something they went out of their way to make a whole little quest for, and then didn't really explain. But we tend to meet most Vision users in this game, so I'm really curious if we'll ever meet them.
Well, typically, yeah, anyone who has a vision is either a playable character or very important to the story. However, when we went to Inazuma, that was when we did meet some vision holders, but they had like the body types of NPCs.
Right.
So, although they're very important, I mean, they don't necessarily have to be playable, or they may only have a very certain relevance to like a side quest or a world quest and never to be seen again. So this might just be another one of those characters that, yes, it's important they did have a vision, and it's important that they had a vision because that's how they did something with it that affected history, but they weren't names. They have a very unique, description, as you can see, but I don't know if we're gonna meet them, because I still have a theory that we're going to be playing through some sort of time skip 500 years ago, and we're going to meet some of these people.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no reason to build up so much only to not deliver.
Well, that would mean we end up meeting
Genshin does
them,
a really
right?
good job of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hopefully, but maybe this is an important person, maybe not. But who knows? I think to me the most important, obviously, is the formation of the chasm, because a lot happens in this particular region or this particular space over 3 years. The chasm is always relevant, even while we're in Sumeru, even right now, last patch. But yeah, Dunyu Ruins is also something that the Adepti don't really like talking about, which is interesting, because none of the refugees or Adepti have spoken about what happened there. So maybe they're gonna bring that up later, but I think they just focused their attention on the chasm for all of it, because it was kind of on the outskirts of what they're gonna try to protect, that 60-mile thing, hold the line here. Maybe that was just the outskirts of it. But yeah. Oh, speaking of which, the vision holders in Inazuma. Josh, would you like to take us into a brief little history recap of the Cataclysm in Inazuma?
Okay, so let's do this. Inazuma, the Cataclysm, 500 years ago. Takamine the Mist-Splitter and Mikoshi Chiyo are among those who campaigned alongside A, acting as the Raiden Shogun, against the dark forces that emerged during the Cataclysm. Takamine is eventually overwhelmed by the monsters and disappears, despite his determination to return to Asase Hibiki's side. Chiyo is swallowed by a beast of sin with a tiger's body and a snake's head. Though she manages to tear the beast apart from the inside out, she is stained by its deep sin. Years ago, Chiyo turns her blade on A only to be defeated and driven away. This betrayal tarnishes the Mikoshi clan's reputation. Over time, the tale of Chiyo the Tiger Bite would evolve into that of Torachiyo, a male lieutenant of Baal's. Years ago, the Kitsune Saigu is consumed by the dark forces and most of her memories are dissolved into filth. The uncorrupted remains of her memories eventually manifest as Hanachiru Sato, who is now a TCG card. During Kainria's destruction, Makoto leaves A behind to defend Inazuma, and Makoto alone goes to Kainria, where she is slain. When A arrives to Kainria, she finds Makoto dying in her arms. She enters Makoto's mind and hears Makoto's last words. A decides to save Makoto's realm of consciousness and bring it back to Inazuma. When A returns to Inazuma, she finds that the sacred Sakura miraculously appears at the top of Mount Yogo, although according to everyone else, the sacred Sakura has existed for ages. A eventually accepts that the tree is the result of the miracle surrounding Makoto's consciousness. The sacred Sakura's power helps A to overcome the monsters and quell the disaster in Inazuma. Okay, so basically we heard a lot of this stuff through World Quest in Inazuma, right? So what stood out to you, Kahi?
I had no idea A went to Kainria.
Yeah.
I thought A was always in Inazuma.
I thought there was a picture, maybe it was a fan art, but it was a picture of A holding Makoto in her arms, dying.
Well, that was an official video, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, so there you go. Yeah.
That was like the official cutscene where it was like 2D hand drawn, you know.
Right, the one that
art
shows her
style.
friends, right?
Oh yeah. I didn't know that was Karin Ria. I thought that was, because my whole like view of A is that she loves Inazuma. She wants to preserve it. She wants to like guard it and keep it preserved for all eternity. So she's like only there. Because even to this day, A has never set foot outside of her country. Only
since she took over from Makoto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's why she feels
last
right.
patch,
Like why she wants to protect it is because she wants to honor Makoto's memory.
right. And this last patch is the only time people are actually able to go outside of Inazuma. So that's why we have Yoimiya's story where she's going all over the place, all the way to Sumeru. Ugh. Yeah. So A visited Kain Ria. And who the other one? Kitsune Saigu. So Kitsune Saigu is consumed by the dark forces. That was her friend, right? The white hair?
Right.
Okay, so that was her. And so most of her memories are dissolved into filth. The uncorrupted remains of her memories manifest as Hanachiro Sato. And you said Hanachiro Sato is a card now?
Yeah.
Is that new?
Yeah, in this last patch.
Hold on. Oh, so it is one of the new cards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But she was
Oh,
part
the
of
Fox Mask.
she was part of the
Oh,
Sacred
yeah, I remember
Sakura
this one now.
cleansing ritual quest where we had to open
Yeah,
up
I
the
remember
bottom
now.
part
Okay.
of the Sakura tree and cleanse
Mhm.
it. Yeah.
Okay, now I remember her. Okay. Interesting. All right. So that was technically her, but technically not her. So she's like a remnant of her. Nice. Okay. What's the big takeaway for you? What's the biggest detail from the Inazuma Cataclysm?
Well, the biggest thing for me is Mikoshi Chiyo, who was also another of A's friends, becoming more or less corrupted and turning her blade on A. And I think this is probably one of the more sad stories, because to have to fight your once close friend, is always tragic. So I'm really curious to find out if we learn more about the tale of the Chiyo the Tiger Bite. You know?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, was there a mention of that one during like the little island with all the cats and the cat shrine? Neko. Was she mentioned that? Was she mentioned in that particular quest line? Do you remember that?
I don't remember for
The
sure.
little cat, the little
I mean,
cat
of course I
shrine.
remember the cat. I don't remember if this is related to that or not.
Because I know like they brought up this tiger, Chiyo the Tiger Bite, was either during a summer event in Inazuma. Might have been something with the boat. Because I remember this name coming up, but I can't remember exactly where.
The name
we'll
of
probably find out
Mikoshi
somewhere.
Chiyo?
No, like the Chiyo the Tiger Bite. Like the Tiger Bite was like a title that came up through some kind of one. We heard that in some kind of event. It's either when we were looking into the history of the boat from the boat event during the archipelago, or the Neko quest line in that little shrine island. I'm not too sure, but I could probably look it up later.
The Oni mask that is used as ascension material is called Mask of the Tiger's Bite.
Wait, Tiger Spite or Tiger's Bite?
Tiger's Bite.
Oh, okay, because Tiger Spite's something else too. Okay.
Yeah, so
And what's that
I
one
think
from?
the story comes from the story of the ascension materials.
Oh, but is that for a specific person's ascension material, or is that like a gem or something?
It's for weapons. For
Oh, weapon. Okay.
yeah.
Oh, ascension. That ascension. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's it for Inazuma.
For Inazuma, going into the most recent place that is still ongoing, still kind of wrapping up the story of Sumeru. Definitely a lot happened in Sumeru, but specifically about the Cataclysm. 500 years ago, in Sumeru during the Cataclysm, the previous Dendro Archon, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, disappears during the Cataclysm. The king of the forest, Viagara, dies protecting the forest, and his successors today are the Rishbaland Tigers. Now, in the Girdle of the Sands, so Greater Lord Rukkhadevata traveled to Tunigi Hollow, where abyssal monsters were active. The former Hydro Archon's remains formed the Amrita Pool. In order to anchor the former Hydro Archon into the mortal realm, Rukkhadevata grew the Harvest Tokum. Harvest Tokum. That's a hard one. Harvest Tokum. Simurgh finally awakens from its slumber. As destined, Simurgh drank the Amrita, purifying it from the abyss, and sacrificed itself. Simurgh's form was shattered into countless Kavarna, the most sentient of which became the Pari. And just a little bit after that, 500 years ago, the current Dendro Archon, Lesser Lord Kusanali, is born, and she inherits the Dendro Gnosis and becomes the first Akasha Terminal. So right around the same time of her disappearance, we have immediately Lesser Lord Kusanali was created.
Simurgh is the giant bird.
Which one's the giant bird?
Simurgh.
Which giant bird?
The divine giant bird. There's no picture. It's just a giant bird.
Ah, okay. Okay, so we never saw it in game, did we?
You finished the Pari quest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the one that Sarush was always talking about being as amazing as Simurgh and sacrificing themselves for the greater.
Oh, that's what. Oh, yeah, that's the one that she was talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
We just never got to see it. I'm thinking like, what? I'm trying to think of all the birds we saw in.
Yeah,
in
we haven't seen it.
Like, you're not talking about the fungus bird, are you? No.
Yeah, or the lightning.
The fungus bird is something completely different. Or the lightning, the thunderbird. Wait, where is that one?
The thunderbird in Surumi Island.
The thunderbird.
The one that.
Oh, not in Sumeru, but the other one.
No, the Simurgh, the divine bird, is in the new area, in Sumeru. 3.6 area.
Oh, why am I drawing a blank?
With the Pari. We don't see this word. We just don't. They just talk about it.
Oh, that's why. So we don't... Okay, we just talk about it. We just don't see it. I got you. So, I'm actually kind of curious why King Deshret wasn't a part of the Cataclysm way back then. Pretty sure... Wasn't he the one who introduced, like, the forbidden knowledge into the world? Wasn't that the Cataclysm? Because the Cataclysm for the rest of the world, is when all the abyssal monsters rose from like the ground up. But then in Sumeru and specifically the desert, what they called the Cataclysm was like the introduction of the forbidden knowledge and, you know, destroying the whole city in the desert, right?
Yeah. So this part.
Because there's an apocalypse and a cataclysm.
Well, the abyssal monsters.
Are they different?
That were appearing in Tunigi Hollow.
Right. So the new area specifically.
Right, but those were where the abyssal monsters were coming from.
Okay. But I'm trying to.
So you know how in the Cataclysm it says monsters from the abyss invade the above-ground world of Teyvat, causing widespread devastation. Right. Well, the monsters from the abyss invaded Sumeru through the Tunigi Hollow. That big whirlpool that we got rid of, big abyssal whirlpool.
Yeah. So the one that we changed and resolved. Right. But then I'm trying to figure out if the Cataclysm is different from that forbidden knowledge apocalypse. So it sounds like it is different, like just different.
Well, remember the Cataclysm happened in Khaenri'ah. The Cataclysm is where all the Archons were supposed to go and fight.
Okay, so they
right.
Yeah, in my mind I was thinking it was like a worldwide cataclysm that affected everything, but it affected specifically Khaenri'ah, and we see the ripple effects here and there. Okay, so King Deshret's one is different. It's like an isolated event, but not directly related to the Cataclysm. Okay. Wow, at some point in my head, like I was thinking this one event happened and everything got affected and everything was like went through the same thing.
That was the curse, the Khaenri'ah curse. Like that destruction of Khaenri'ah was what happened, and that technically affected everybody.
Right. It did, but like the the forbidden knowledge entering and flowing into the desert region was not the thing that happened to Kyria,
Right.
right?
Oh,
Okay, so
maybe
I thought they were the same thing.
maybe we should have read. Kahi, I'm looking at the Cataclysm in Teyvat under the Cataclysm thing, and it actually explains what is happening. It doesn't just give bullet notes. It says, Sumeru was apparently affected by the Cataclysm later than other countries such as Mondstadt, and it occurred simultaneously with the contamination of Irminsul by the Forbidden Knowledge. So they happened simultaneously.
Oh, so it was.
Yeah.
Okay, they did. Okay, the Cataclysm wasn't just the monsters rising. The Cataclysm was literally linked to Forbidden Knowledge. It just happened in different time periods.
Right.
Or like the effect didn't happen until later. So Sumeru was not getting affected at the same time as Mondstadt, Liyue, or Inazuma.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my normal voice. Thank you very much. Let's recap real quick the Cataclysm in Teyvat. So we read a couple of the sections from the wiki pages, but I'm going to read a little bit more cohesive summary from the Cataclysm wiki page itself. So, in Mondstadt, after monsters began emerging from Kyria, the Knights of Favonius, led by Grandmaster Arundelen and his anticipated successor, Rostam, went on an expedition to Kyria to fight the monsters. Rostam died during the expedition, leaving Arundel and Rosalind Lohefalter, who was studying at the Sumeru Academia when he died, greatly bereaved. Arundelen gave up fighting and retired from the Knights of Favonius out of grief, while Rosalind used her knowledge to transform her body into that of living flame and enact her vengeance against the monsters, becoming known as the Crimson Witch of Flames. Meanwhile, Mondstadt was attacked by a corrupt Durin who was created and sent to Teyvat by Rhindaughter. As Arundelen had given up fighting after Rostam's death, there was no Lionfang Knight to lead in battle and no one strong enough to take on Durin. The people of Mondstadt cried out for help and were heard by the Anemo Archon who called upon Dvalin to fight Durin. Dvalin defeated the larger dragon, but ingested Durin's poisonous blood in the process. Dvalin went to Old Mondstadt to recover, while Durin fell down on Dragonspine, whose extreme unnatural cold allowed the power inside Durin to seep into the land of Dragonspine. Even today, Durin's heart in Wormrest Valley appears to still beat. So that's Mondstadt. So, Liyue. In Liyue, the Chasm and Dunyu ruins are two known locations majorly impacted by the Cataclysm. Monsters poured out of the chasm, and in response, Morak sent the Millelith to defend and evacuate the miners. The Yaksha Bosacius, who once abandoned his duty to defend Liyue after going mad from karma, was drawn to the bloodshed and fought alongside the Millelith. Bosacius, the exorcist Boyang, and some of the Millelith who chose to lead the vanguard ultimately perished in the chasm after luring the monsters into a mysterious underground palace with the power to negate the power of the Abyss, and using the fantastic compass to seal them in the chasm's bed. Liyue eventually won the battle, but at the cost of many lives. What occurred in Dunyu's ruins is unknown, but its people decided to abandon the city and move to Liyue Harbor. None of the refugees nor Adepti have spoken about what had happened there. Now Inazuma. Shortly before the Abyss invaded Teyvat, the Kitsune Urakusai apparently did something linked to it, which greatly angered the Kitsune Saigu and led to his banishment. The Kitsune Saigu, aware of the impending threat, moved from the Grand Narukami Shrine to Tenshukaku to stay close to the Electro Archon, then Makoto. Makoto was also aware that something was going to happen in Kyria, saying it was not somewhere that any Archon could afford to ignore, after A asked her about it long after her death. When the Abyss attacked, Makoto and her close allies A, Mikoshichiyo, the Kitsune Saigu, Reizenbo, and Takamine the Mistsplitter fought back the otherworldly threat but eventually perished or disappeared. Chiyo was consumed by a beast of sin, and while she slew the monster from within, was corrupted. She turned against A and fought her, which ended after A cut her horns and sword arm off and forced her to flee. The Kitsune Saigu disappeared and was consumed by the Abyss for reasons that are unclear, but likely related to the Thunder Sakuras, which were nearly overwhelmed trying to purify the land during the Cataclysm. Reizenbo, enraged by her inability to protect the Kitsune Saigu, left on a self-imposed exile. Takamine disappeared in a battle against the Dark Forces, only to be killed by his former lover Asase Hibiki when he finally resurfaced many years later. Makoto was slain in battle in what is suggested to be Kyria, dying in her sister's arms. And Sumeru. Sumeru was apparently affected by the Cataclysm later than the other countries such as Mondstadt, and it occurred simultaneously with the contamination of Irminsul by the Forbidden Knowledge. It's not known if the two events are connected, However, the Denjo Archon, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, was slain during the Cataclysm, which caused Viridescent to no longer be able to hear the grass and trees speak. Old Varanara was one of the places attacked in Sumeru by hordes of ruin machines and rift wolves. While the Aranara fought fiercely against the invaders, presumably with some humans, the land itself was heavily scarred from the fighting. A strange entity known as Marana's avatar quickly formed at some point during or after the battle. While the Aranara managed to seal it away, it eventually managed to bypass the seal and began to spread an anomaly later known as the Withering across Sumeru's forests. In the Girdle of Sands, monsters also emerged from the abyss to attack the area, with the Pari and Nagarjunites working together to repel the threat. Several monsters were also encased in a strange gray crystal that resulted from the powers of the abyss, leaving them in a state of torpor for the next few centuries. The Pari struggled to keep the abyssal power from overwhelming the rest of Teyvat, with a great tree used to repel it. Without anyone to maintain it, however, the tree was on the verge of degrading completely to the abyss until the traveler and a Pari named Sarush discovered the remaining great songs of Kavarina to purify the crystallized trees at Tunigi Hollow. So in the end, the Cataclysm in Khaenri'ah. The clash between Celestia and the Seven versus Khaenri'ah ended with the gods' victory. As punishment for losing, the Eclipse dynasty was wiped out. Dainsleif, a knight of the royal family, as well as all those pure-blood Khaenri'ans were cursed with immortality, while citizens of Khaenri'ah who were half-blood or belonging to other nations entirely were instead afflicted with a curse that transformed them into monsters and hilichurls. Some people appear to have avoided the curse, such as Kaya, an ostensibly Rhine daughter, but their exact circumstances are unknown. Kaya's circumstances are of particular note because of several of his ancestors, Clothar and Caribert, were afflicted with the curse, perhaps suggesting that it was broken at some point, allowing the remainder of Kaya's lineage to escape its effects. Some, like Dainsleif, have some unknown means of retaining their sanity, although it merely mitigates the effects of their curses. During the disaster, Dainsleif orders Halfdan, an elite of the royal guards, to protect the people of Khaenri'ah at all costs. However, Halfdan and the other royal guards end up transforming into shadowy husks. Despite this, Halfdan was able to retain part of his consciousness despite lacking whatever Dainsleif uses to mitigate his own curse. Paimon also concludes from the account given by the traveler's sibling that the monsters of the Abyss Order were originally the people of Khaenri'ah, which appears to be supported by the Pyro Abyss Lector Enjo's search for before Sun and Moon, mirroring the Khaenri'ah delegation's search from at least 2,000 years ago. As a result of the curse, Dainsleif no longer views hilichurls or abyss monsters as human. It is still unclear what the suggested link between the hilichurls' Eclipse tribe and Khaenri'ah's Eclipse destiny means. After the traveling twins arrived in Teyvat, Traveler's sibling awoke first and eventually bore witness to Khaenri'ah's destruction. After the Cataclysm, they journeyed through the 7 nations of Teyvat alongside Dainsleif. Okay.
So there's a lot that happened, but not all simultaneously, so that's an interesting fact. So when Cataclysm happened, the effects trickled down through the nations, so Sumeru being the one that was affected later. Not necessarily Mondstadt was affected first, but apparently Mondstadt, Liyue, Inazuma kind of shared the same effects around the same time, but had different effects, of course. So Mondstadt had the introduction of Durin, and that's when Signora, or her original name Rosalind, went on a rampage and became, the Witch of Crimson Witch of Flames. Liyue, you had the Chasm Formation and Doing Your Ruins. Inazuma, you had the Kitsune Urakasai and Mikoto's death, and the Mist Splitter, all they forming the group to fight against, or to go to Khaenri'ah. And what was the last one? Saigyu. Okay,
Kitsune Saigyu?
Here. There's Kitsune Saigyu. I was like, something happened to Kitsune Saigyu that was interesting. Where was it? The Kitsune Saigyu disappeared and was consumed, in quotation marks, by the Abyss for reasons that are unclear but likely related to the Thunder Sakuras, which were nearly overwhelmed trying to purify the land during the Cataclysm. Reizenbo, enraged by her inability to protect the Kitsune Saigyu, left on a self-imposed exile. So that's the last we knew of Reizenbo. Takamine disappeared in a battle against the Dark Forces, only to be killed by his former lover Asase Hibiki when he finally resurfaced many years later. So Takamine is dead. Saigyu is dead. Reizenbo could be the only one that's still alive. Unless Reizenbo is mortal.
Is
right?
he?
Raisin Bow was the only one that didn't have an actual death, just self-imposed exile. And just left.
Right.
And Makoto was slain. So Inazuma, you had the group forming to kind of like fight against the Cataclysm. And then Sumeru was, of course, the Airman Soul and the Vanarana and the Pari. And the old Hydro Archon just getting tethered to that pool. And that's where you had the Abyss monsters coming out from that vortex. Okay, so this is what happened during the Cataclysm in all the nations. So each nation was affected differently, but the root of this whole series of events was this Cataclysm. And this is only like 500 years ago, so obviously there was a lot more stuff that happened, 2,000 years ago, because Zhongli is like 6,000 years old. But then the Archon War itself was 2,000 years ago, and the Cataclysm was 500 years ago. Whew. Alright, so just getting our history flushed out into the open, just getting our reminders. That's why I kind of like these lore learn-alongs. It's good reminders of what's actually happening, what happened, what's going on, what to look forward to, or why things are happening now as they are.
Yeah, and so I think that leads to, we don't have answers for our last community question, but that leads to our next community question, which will be answered in the next episode. So Kahi, could you give us that next community question?
So the next community question is, what's your favorite historical event in Teyvat? It doesn't have to be related to a cataclysm or anything bad or terrible or related to death, but just what's something fun or what's something interesting that you think that happened throughout Teyvat's history? Let us know, and we'll read it next time.
And if you want to let us know the answer to your question, feel free to join our Discord, which the link is in the description, or tweet at us with this episode tweet, replying to this episode tweet, or comment on Spotify, and we will hopefully see it before the next episode, and then we'll be able to answer your questions. So, thank you everybody for participating today. Now we're going to close the episode with our last wish segment. So, Kahi, would you like to wish?
Alright, my wishes are up.
Okay, what will you be wishing for?
I kind of want Kiara, but, since Yoimiya's right there, and I don't really have Yoimiya.
Yoimiya, best girl.
I know. You know what? Just because. I'm going to roll.
I hope you get her.
Once on her banner. Alright, here we go. It's blue.
No.
Are there any blue characters? No? Okay. Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers.
Blue characters. Alright, so I am going to roll on... I'm going to roll on Yoimiya's banner. Even though I, of course, have Yoimiya, and I probably wouldn't even use her constellation, I just want to, roll and see how it goes. And then I'll try to get Kirarara. Kirararagi-san.
I just suddenly heard of Durarara.
Yeah, Kirarara. Okay, so ready? And go! Kirara. Oh, it's blue. And it's the black tassel! Ew! Okay, so that's it. Black tassel it is. So, that wraps up the show for today. Anyways, thanks for listening, and if you have time, please leave us a comment and a review. We'd really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you're listening. Follow us on Twitter, once again, at Genshin Guys Pod. Follow me at Jside Gaming, Kahi at Kahiao, Kahiyiao, and also me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Jside. Don't forget to join the Discord, the link is in the description. And as always,
Ad Astra Abyssos.
Hoshitoshine o mezase.
Enjoy.